Marla, and I am going to talk to you about getting to yes. I took this course on negotiation at the law school here in my hometown um, many moons ago, and we had to read this book as part of our class. I read it, and one thing about learning is that you might learn the concepts and the theory, um, but sometimes the application of it doesn't come right away until you start using the concepts and the theory and the knowledge in your everyday life. Obviously, I'm not a lawyer, and so I could never really use these concepts because I'd have to be a lawyer. But as a book lady, you sort of have to use the same concepts in trying to persuade your customer that they need your product. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about how I use the concepts to help. And let me tell you, in today's society, I think many people are are not very good negotiators. Most people are not, and they don't learn how to communicate effectively. And I'm the one of the first ones to tell you that in my marriage, I love my husband, but he's not a very good negotiator. He is okay, and for some things, he's really good at it, and in other things, I'm really good at it. So I'm the softer version, and he's the harder version. But some of the things that I've learned about negotiation and persuading, a lot of times, most people, my husband's most people, he is, and he doesn't work to improve himself like I do. I'm constantly telling him, if you work on yourself and you're more positive, positivity comes from God. Negativity comes from the devil. So if you have any negative emotions, that's not going to help you in communicating with others. Um, you need to be positive, and you need to be thoughtful and logical, and be balanced in order to communicate with other people. Because if you let any bias in, you're not going to be effective at coming to a compromise or a yes, a win-win solution. It might end up being a win-lose solution. It might be end up being a lose-lose solution. So really, your own emotions need to be balanced in order to communicate with others. And if the other person is not balanced, it gets really hard to come to a meeting of the minds. So when I communicate with anyone, I talk a lot, and I like talking a lot. And sometimes you answer the question, and I'm like, okay, you answered the question to my satisfaction, and I move on. But a lot of times I've noticed that the other person is not there yet. And I have a hard time kind of like stopping myself. Because I'm kind of like go, 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 and I get it. Once I satisfy my own answer, I understand the where what other question I need to ask, and so I'm constantly I'm fast. I come up with one answer. I don't linger on a topic. That's why I can go on and move on to the next point or to the next idea. And I think it does frustrate a lot of people when they communicate with me, because I'm constantly moving on to the next idea. And even when I'm talking about current events, I'm always connecting. I love connecting. And in recent years, since I've been teaching my son, I've just been learning a lot about history and timeline, and I'm in the process where things in real life connect with what I've been learning in my educating my son. So I think I'm learning. The teacher learns more than the student always, because they are just one step ahead. Um, so I think that in communicating, people get frustrated with me, and I get it, because I just move on. you know, and I just could move on and talk about different things. Um, so I didn't finish this book. I did finish, but in my reading, I sort of like skipped around when we were doing it for class, and I just read up like what I needed for the class. So I probably do have to read it again and apply it methodically. Um, so let me just talk about emotions, because that really is where a lot of people fail in communicating. And you're not going to be taught about communication skills at school or how to handle your own emotions. They're not going to teach it to you. You have to learn. You have to learn the virtues yourself if you go to public school or whatever. And you have to learn, and a lot of times, if you're in public school, your parents are working, and they, a lot of times, are well meaning people, but they don't help you always. And then you have that peer pressure standing behind you. And I think that's the peer pressure is the trick for the teenagers. And because of compulsory education, it really has taken away the parents' right to educate their own children. The state has tried to impose that the right to educate, and on themselves, and take it away from parents. But this is something that parents should be aware of, and they should be working on themselves. So, in negotiating, particularly in a bitter dispute, feelings may be more important than talk. And feelings today, I think, is at the heart of social emotional learning. But it's not the government's job to teach you about feelings. This is really your parents' job. And God gave you to your parents. And when you lose the spirituality which we have in public schools, you can't balance your emotions accurately because you're balancing to what? Um, so emotions on one side will generate emotions on the other side. So in my conflict at home, and I am going to bring it at home, a lot of times my husband brings up the fear may breed anger, and anger may breed fear. My husband has a lot of negative emotions, and emotions may quickly bring a negative negotiation to an impasse or to an end. And a lot of times in our negotiations, because of the negative emotions of my spouse, a lot of times the impasse comes to an end. It comes to an end, or we come to an impasse, but it comes again if we don't resolve that conflict. It'll pop up, and I consider myself the balanced person in my marriage. Yes. Okay, so first recognize and understand emotions, theirs and yours. And I'm very good about understanding uh, the other party's emotions as well as my own. I really know myself really, really well. And when I look at myself first during a negotiation, I always ask, am I feeling nervous? Am I feeling. So I know when I'm nervous, I know that I'm not going to be on the top shit because I'm nervous, I'm scared. And my stomach might be like upset. But I'm rarely angry. My emotion of anger is usually not there because I'm not an angry person. But usually the emotions of nervousness and frustration and fear do creep up. And that's one of my underlying, because I'm afraid of the other party's emotions and who they are and what they are. Um, so, are you angry at the other side? Listen to them and get a sense of what their emotions are. And let me tell you, I'm very good at getting a sense of what your emotions are. And that puts a little more fear and nervousness inside of me. Um, so I might tiptoe around certain issues if I get a feeling that your emotions aren't quite up to par. Um, you may find it useful to write down what you feel. Perhaps, like if you're afraid or if you're worried or if you're angry, write it down really quickly as you're listening in your conversation. Um, be confident, be relaxed. I'm normally very confident and pretty relaxed, even though inside I'm like nervous. um, but in dealing with negotiators who present their organizations, yeah, it is easy to treat them as more mouthpieces without emotions because the negotiations are man made, they're not God made. We human beings are made in God's image. And we're not perfect because we are emotional. And that's the bottom line. It is very important to remember that the other party too, like you, has personal feelings, fears, hopes, and dreams. And their careers may be at stake. So when you're dealing with organizations, you're dealing with the people the organization hires to deal with certain things, to manage the business. So you need to remember that you're not dealing with you're dealing with a man-made organization. Number one, something that our founding fathers feared most in creating our country was they feared big business. They did not fear little business. Little business, they care more about people because they understand that people make them money. Do you know what I'm saying? It's big businesses like Facebook and Bill Gates, Microsoft. These big businesses are the ones that trample over the little people. And so our founding fathers were afraid of that. And that's why they kept government limited, because government creates business. They do all the regulations, and we have more than a number of regulations out there. And one of the regulations that is really bothersome is that there is a Section 230 that gives big business rights to not be sued. And that's wrong because it prevents us little guys from an equal playing field in the internet. It really does bother me. But anyways, make emotions explicit and acknowledge them legitimate, as legitimate. Talk with people on the other side about their emotions. Talk about your own. It doesn't not hurt to say, the people on our side feel we have been mistreated and very upset. We're afraid an agreement will not be kept even if it is reached, rational or not. That is your concern. And when you are upfront about your concerns, they will be upfront about their concerns too. So honesty is a big trick when you're negotiating. And I'm a very honest person, and I will tell you, and I'll be upfront about my feelings. I wear my feelings on my sleeve. So making your feelings or theirs an explicit focus of the discussion will not underscore the seriousness of the problem. It will also make the negotiation less reactive and more proactive. When people hide their feelings, trust is not there. You cannot build trust if you hide your feelings from others. And this is one thing that I've learned in building relationships with other women, other moms, is that a lot of times I'm getting this feeling, but I'm not being told exactly what their feeling or their concern is. Or I'm myself afraid because they put the blame on me or they judge me. And you're not going to get any warmth out of me if you're judging me and blaming me for the problem. You know what I'm saying? That's not how it works. And I'm a strong advocate for myself. So if you're throwing at me, it's your fault, it's your fault, it's your fault. Well, I'm going to pull back. And I'm like, it's not my fault. This is not my fault. This is not the problem. The problem is not me. Okay, the problem is the organization. The problem is the group. The problem is the community. The problem is the policies aren't right. People don't know how to build relationships. So I feel emotions so deeply. I could feel everybody's emotions, and it scares the bejeez out of me. Um, and people don't realize that I have a very good concept of other people's emotions. And I think that when I bring up issues of politics or whatever, I'm really getting a sense for the other person's emotion. Um, and that's one thing that I'm going to be honest with is really I do bring up politics because it is an emotional issue. And I could get a sense of the other person's emotions a lot better. That is the truth. A lot of people hide their emotions. They don't want to show their negative emotions. They're afraid to show that they're emotional. So allow the other side to let off steam. And a lot of times too, when you bring up these hot topics, you could also let the other person uh, give you the steam. And a lot of times, I've actually been in situations where men and women, where I've allowed other person to just relax their emotions, because I'm very good at probing. If I want to find out something, I question and I probe and I push, and I try to get it out of you somehow. And in that moment, I've seen women lose their self control and actually like just knock me down. And I'm like, whoa, what just happened here? And I realize they have all these feelings inside that they're just bottled up, and they just take it out on me. And I know from there that this relationship, this person is not going to happen as long as they have those emotions in themselves. It's just not, because I'm not a negative person to start with. I am very positive, and I like dealing with positive people who control their own emotions and who are balanced in themselves. So that's one thing about me. If I might push because I want to get to know you. And as soon as I find out what your virtues are and what you lack, I might step away and say, this is not somebody I want to be friends with. I'm going to keep my distance. So that is something about me that is a truth. Because I've been in situations like my neighbor, for example. All I had to say was, you're a freedom lover. And boom, they knocked me down. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to push away from you. And that's sad because they're neighbors. You know what I'm saying? My other neighbor next door, I can't even get their emotions out of them. They're just like cold and aloof and non-responsive. And I know that I know all the neighbors in my neighborhood who they are and what their emotions are. And frankly, when I talk to people and they're open with me, I'm open with them. And those are the friendships that I try to keep and build on. If the more open the person is with me, the more open I'm going to be with them. And that is something that is scary because a lot of people today are not open. They're not open and they don't even want to discuss things. I have another neighbor who is civil, and that's it, but the wife won't even talk to me. We had one discussion and we had a difference of opinion, and that was it. You see what I'm saying? So people do not know how to build relationships today, and they do not know how to build trust because they don't know how to communicate effectively to have that meeting of the minds. And it's kind of scary because I'm as much a people person as I am an introvert. I could turn off my extroversion and turn on my introversion at will. I'm good either way. As long as I have books, I'm fine. Books. That's all I need, really, in life. My husband says, "Well, you keep on buying more books," and I'm like, "Yes, because they're my friends." I'm learning. All I care about is about learning. I learn about me. I learn about others through books, and it just there's nothing like killing boredom like a book. And so I want to be that role model for my son. That, you know what, when you have trouble, pick up a book. When you have problems, pick up a book. Just hide in a book. You know, the books, that's all you need. It'll solve all your problems. Just pick up a book. You know, you're going to learn about yourself. You're going to learn about others. You're going to learn something new every time you pick up a book. And I used to read a lot more fiction. And this one is one I'm going to read because I never read it as a kid. I read Little Women, and I love Little Women because I enjoy looking at all the different relationships from the females and what they were going through when they were going through puberty. Because I did not go to puberty in my junior or high school years. I was in puberty in my 20s. So that's a little secret that I shouldn't, too much information for this video, but it's true. So this is one book I want to read in my older age right now. And I don't have daughters, but I do want to read it. It's a really good book. I really enjoy Anne of Green Gable. This girl is phenomenal. She grows up as a single girl, and she's this intelligent and thoughtful person who has who's learning how to balance her emotions and deal with the people around her. She is so intelligent. She is such a great person. And this one is Osborne's Illustrated Originals. So if you have never bought our originals, Osborne does such a good job of giving you the story and not taking away anything. This is the original, so they haven't taken anything away. It's not abridged by any means. We do have a picture book that's abridged for the younger kids that you can start them off on. But this one right here is not abridged. It's unabridged, complete. And at the end of the book, they tell you about the author, L.M. Montgomery. Her name is Lucy Mudd Montgomery. She was born in 1874 through 1942, and I believe she is from Canada, because in the series on TV, it's based out of Quebec or Montreal. No, wait, one of those places. I didn't finish it because it wasn't appropriate for my son. And plus, I rather read it. And get the full story and then watch the movie and see if the movie is an accurate interpretation of the book. So I rather read books first and then watch them. But sometimes, you really do need the movie because you don't understand. You want to see the other person's perspective. The movie gives you a good other person perspective. So I don't knock movies down. I like watching movies. But I like watching good movies, and we don't have enough good movies today, like we did when I was growing up in the 80s. Anyways, so what was I going to say? Back to emotions. So hence, instead of interrupting polemical speeches and walking out on the other party, as often most of our spouses do, you may decide to control yourself. And this is very hard for a lot of people. Sit there and allow them to pour out their grievances on you. And I'm very good about letting others pour out their grievances on me without me reacting. And then I'm like, wow. And then I'm like, I don't want to talk to you anymore because you've just affected my whole entire persona. So when constituents are listening, such occasions may release their frustrations as well as the negotiators. So don't react to emotional outbursts. And I'm very good about not reacting to emotional outbursts. My husband is not. He reacts. No. I'm better than he is. Releasing emotions can prove risky if it leads to an emotional reaction. And I've seen people react emotionally to a lot of things, and then we're like, what just happened? One usual and effective technique to contain the impact of emotions was used in the 1950s by the Human Relations Committee, a labor management group set up in the steel industry to handle emerging conflicts before they become serious problems. So, the members of the committee adopted the rule that only one person can get angry at a time. Now, is that pretty weird? This made it legitimate for others not to respond stormily to an angry outburst. Hey, that's good. It also made letting emotional steam easier by making an outburst itself more legitimate. That's okay. It's his turn. The rule has the further advantage of helping people control their emotions. Breaking the rule implies that you have lost self-control, and or so you lose some face. And let me tell you that I have self-control over my emotions. You will not. When I was younger, I used to break down in tears in my boss's office when somebody would just like attack me and have an angry outburst or start judging me and criticizing me. And I almost to the point where I became afraid to be in confrontation because I knew I was just going to start bawling. I'm a female, you know. But now as I get older, I've learned to kind of control those emotions enough to let the other person just like attack me. And I've learned to take it, and then I just have that self-control. I'm very good and I'm very controlled over my emotions, so that I don't hurt other people's feelings. That said, I am very blunt, and that I will just say it, because sometimes you just need to say it. There is no other way to put it, or I can't come up with a freaking sugar-coated method quick enough to say it easier. You know what I'm saying? So I just say it a lot of times. So, on many occasions, an apology can diffuse emotional effectively. And I am very good about apologizing and being upfront and acknowledging the other person's emotions. Even when you do not acknowledge personal responsibility for the action or admit an intention to harm. So I'm very good about just saying, look, I'm really sorry you feel this way. However, I don't feel that I am personally responsible for this that you're bringing on to me. You know what I'm saying? But if I am responsible, I still say I'm sorry and I'm going to fix it. I'm going to fix it. Somehow. It's going to magically fix itself. So a lot of times, because we women are very emotional, we are just created in God's image with these emotions, and He's given us His emotions so that we balance our men. And that's what you don't understand. God created men and women. He didn't create two women or two men. You cannot have it, because two women are still emotional and two men are still unemotional. You know what I'm saying? But we were all created in God's image. So we're all different. You have this wonderful personality that God gave you so that you can balance your team. Everybody has been given a wonderful personality so that we can all work together. You cannot push the man down. You cannot take away the paternity of what God created. God created, but if you are not hearing what the other side is saying, there is no communication. So you really do have to listen. I mean, really put aside your emotion and listen. And I do listen very clearly, but I don't wait. I'm constantly, um, I'll listen and I'll say, oh, I get what she's up to. And so I'll try to interact. And one of the problems with my husband is, so one of the third problem is misunderstanding, where the parties speak different languages. The chances for misunderstanding is compounded. So in the earlier years, when the first settlers from England came out, they couldn't understand the Native Americans or the French or the Spanish, and so there was conflict. And so that added to the hatred and the racism that some people are calling today. It's we there was no meeting of the minds because of the breakdown of communication. So listening actively and acknowledging what has been said, it will help with meeting of the minds and help clear misunderstandings. I'm not always good about relaying that, and I forget that. Even though I understand what they're going through, I need to speak it and let the person know. So talking to the other side is easy. So speak to be understood. This is very good about me. I am very straightforward, and I'm just to the point. I'm not always punchy, but I do speak for the other side. I do try to communicate to be understood. And it is easy to forget sometimes that a negotiation is not a debate. And when I communicate, a lot of times the other side thinks that I'm debating with them. But that's their misunderstanding. And I have to, when I'm talking with people like that, I have to say, hey, this is not a debate. I'm just sharing ideas. You know what I'm saying? So I'm very clear. This is just a sharing of an idea. I don't care what you I don't care to be persuaded and I don't care to persuade you. I just want to share the idea. Um, and this is what social media, there's a problem with social media. It's because there's too many people that are on the other side and you can't tell what the other person is thinking from the screen. You know, they could be thinking this and then telling you that. So there's a lot of dishonesty on social media. That's why I like dealing with people face to face. Even when you're online and you're on Zooming, you can't really tell effectively what the other person is saying. It's not like being right there and seeing the emotion of the other person face to face. Um, you're it's very important. You're not trying to persuade some third party. The person you are trying to persuade is seated at the table with you. If a negotiation is to be compared with a legal proceeding, the situation resembles that of two judges trying to reach agreement on how to decide the case. Try putting yourself in the role, treating the opposite number as a fellow judge and whom you are attempting to work out a joint opinion. In the context, it is clearly unpersuasive to blame the other party for the problem, to engage in name calling, or to raise your voice. I oftentimes do raise my voice a little bit, especially if I am not being heard by the other side. That one right there, but I'm very controlled. I will not blame the other side. I will not name call. But if I'm not being heard and I keep on asking, look, this is what I'm saying, and I rephrase the question enough times or the answer enough times to make myself understood, and you're still not getting it, I might raise my voice a little bit because number one, I'm Cuban, and it's just part of my makeup. But I will. That's one cue that you're gonna get from me that's saying you're not listening, and there is no conversation. So we need to end it right here because it's going to go wrong. It's going to go south. So this right here, uh, uh, if I'm to the point where I cannot get you to understand what I'm saying, it's over because I'm going to raise my voice. And if you tell me, stop yelling at me, well, oh my goodness, you're going to be like, you know what? I'm not yelling at you, but now I'm going to yell at you because I'm Mala Benavides and I am a Cuban and you're not going to put me down. You're not listening. And that is something that I will tell you right there because now you are, instead of diffusing and trying to understand, you're not like, actually, I know you're not listening. You are trying to like make me look bad. Do you know what I'm saying? Okay, so I'm gonna end it right there. But this is a really good book. I highly recommend it for everybody, and I highly recommend that you join my team because when you join my team, you're getting an honest person communicating with you. You're getting somebody who is balanced emotionally to be able to communicate. I am not here. I'm very trustworthy, and I'm very honest. And you're going to learn business skills from me that nobody in the whole entire world knows and understand. I have so much knowledge, so much wisdom. I have so many books, and I'm constantly improving myself and learning how to deal with others. So if you're on my team, ask me questions about how to communicate. Ask me questions about human nature. Ask me questions about the books that I read. Ask me questions about the power, the science of power, which I see it in our government today. Yeah, I do. There is. I'm going to talk about that next. So for another video, the science of power. That's the next video. Toodles for today. And don't forget to support me by going to k4699.myubam.com and buy some children's books for your kids. They need to read. These books are meant for them. Okay? And kids need these books. You cannot have children and not have books in the house. Okay? You need lots of books. They need to understand that they need to read and they need to learn and they need to grow. And the only way that they're going to develop that love of learning is by having books. So go shop k4699.myubam.com and shop for books because we've got the best books of the whole entire world. Thanks. Until next time. Marla Benavides.